So, thank you everybody for being here. Can you hear me, Pasha? Good. Can you talk a little more? I couldn't hear you.
Uh, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
No?
now I can hear you, but when it was down, I couldn't hear you.
Okay, I will be holding my microphone.
Oh, sweet. That's going to be fun. So, I don't know if you can see everybody else, but
can.
I'm Foster Lyons. This is the first time I'm meeting. Now I'm going to call you Pasha because that's easier for me, but I'm going to let you say your full name for the benefit of everybody here.
Yeah. Well, my full name is Pavlo. My last name is Starykov. Pavlo is just a Ukrainian version of the name Paul. So it would be, same as Pablo in Spanish, Pavlo V, P-A-V as in Victor, L-O. But my nickname is Pasha. So
Okay,
this is how my family calls me, Pasha.
I'm going with that.
Mm-hmm.
So now on my screen, Molly Vick is on the upper left. So Molly is an architect, usually working out of New York City with a firm called Ferguson Shamamian. Turns out they are the country and the world's largest dedicated to residential, single-family residential. Am I getting that right, Molly?
Yep.
Okay. But you're now at the moment you're working out of Philadelphia,
Yep.
Pennsylvania. Okay, somewhere in Pennsylvania, undisclosed location in Pennsylvania.
It's classified.
Yes. And in my bottom left, you have Christy Cronin of Building Science Fight Club. She is the
Williamson now, Foster.
Oh, okay,
Williamson.
yeah, okay, fine. I'm Williamson. Sorry. So she is
Took me a long time to find a man to marry. So
she is the founder, CEO, and president. And if you're not following her on Instagram, you certainly should.
I started following.
Oh, you did? Oh,
with
thank you.
With a great interest, yes.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, Pasha, this is being recorded, so make sure you've hit your record button, and I may need to give you permission, actually.
Yes,
Probably
you
the same
do.
with you, Christy.
Yep.
It is showing recording in the left upper corner.
Great.
Yeah, no, but you gotta record it for yourself too. Like on yours,
Oh, I
Pasha.
see. Record.
Yes, yeah. I guess it records everybody's audio independently. Anyway.
Yeah, and well, anyway, just to Pasha, for your sake, when this is over, you've got to save your recording on your computer, and then you got to upload it to the Dropbox link I sent you. And then the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art does what they do with it. They edit it, and eventually they'll publish it. So,
but they haven't done it yet, so who knows? This could just be lost.
Yeah, whatever. You know, out of my control.
This could just be for us.
Yes. So for everybody else's benefit, I'll give you the 1 minute of why I invited Pasha. So first of all, Pasha's as far as I'm concerned, a tiling installation expert, and more specifically, even more of an expert, what I would call light colored and specifically white marble in wet areas. But I first spoke with Pasha because of a project I was involved with in New York City. The company I was working for actually found him and then asked me to go figure out if I believed him, or they sent me some information like, what do you think? And I read it and I was like, holy shit, this guy knows what he's talking about, and I wish I knew this stuff. So then I emailed and I spoke with him and this and that. So he has not only been a practitioner as a ceramic tile and marble installer, he's dedicated himself to doing a whole bunch of research, like building stuff in his backyard and letting it get rained on and this sort of thing, which is it's crazy in our industry, right? So that's probably enough of an introduction. But I'm going to start with a question, Pasha, and then hopefully you can take it from there. Is it true that you were a professional soccer player?
Yeah, that's true.
That's
Wait,
so.
really? That's
Yeah, that's
awesome.
yeah, that's really cool. And is that what got you to the United States?
No, but because I played soccer when I lived in Switzerland, Lausanne, Switzerland, this is
Oh,
how I
I
met my
love
wife. Yeah.
Lausanne. Sorry. Yeah, I love Lausanne. Is it not just absolutely beautiful?
It is for tourists, but not for those who live there. They don't have time to enjoy the views and everything, so their life is
Uh,
hard.
Wait, so you were, oh, I'm sorry. I was so excited about Lausanne. Why were you living there?
Well, I try to find a professional club there. My sister lives in Lausanne, Switzerland. She's lived there for 20 years now, and I played there for one of the clubs, not for their main club. And this is how I met my wife. So she lived. I met her online actually when I was in Switzerland, and I had no plans to move to the United States, but eventually we ended up moving to the United States. Yeah, back in 2008. So I moved to the United States in October 2008, and I think the crisis started 2 weeks later.
wow, you it was like a bringing a disease with you, like
So I've been living in the U.S. for 20 years now, but I recently married an American, and I'm just going through the green card process, and I just got authorization to work in the U.S. and then coronavirus started. So I'm following in your footsteps.
wow.
Where are you originally from? Where are you from?
From Canada, but actually,
I see.
the reason I know Lausanne is my grandparents lived in Montreux, so
Mhm.
just the next town over. But anyway, yeah, you guys, you
Yeah, yeah.
Americans, better be
I've been
careful
there.
who you
I've been
let
to
in.
Montreal. Yep.
So Pasha, when you came here, did you have like ceramic tile in your background, like growing up or this or that, or you just like just
No.
had needed to work when you got here and that's what you did?
Yeah, well, my joke is that before I moved to the United States, I worked with my feet better than with my hands. So my whole life was committed to soccer, and my plans were to become, one day to become a professional soccer coach, to coach a team. But I had no plans to become a construction worker, especially a tile installer. But then when I came, well, just in a nutshell, I tried to go to Portland Timbers, Portland professional team, but back then I was out of practices for maybe 6 months. It was very difficult, and I was still considered as a non-American soccer player. So there were some limits, and I just realized that I would need to go to a different club, and that would mean going traveling across the country. And I just realized that my family was more important for me than my soccer career, and I just quit, and I'm very happy because for professional athletes, it's actually really hard to adopt to a real life. Because I mean, at the age of around 26, I mean, I had no experience but soccer, and it's really tough. And if you quit at the age of 35, sometimes you're not ready for real life at all.
Wow.
And if you don't have any savings, well, you could start, as an entry level construction worker. And very difficult and tough for your family. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that I started my path, uh, well, 11 years ago already. So,
Cool.
but I'm happy with what I'm doing right now. I love professional tile and stone installation. So professional sports taught me a professional approach to things. So, which I'm glad
Cool.
for.
So I read all your stuff and really took a deep dive into it because I'm that variety of a nerd. But for the benefit of our listening audience, you think you could briefly describe like the problem, so to speak, that we're going to end up talking about for the next,
Mhm.
45 minutes?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll try. I'll try. I will try to not take much time to explain it. So, 2 years ago, I did a full Carrara marble master bathroom, including a walk-in shower, fully done with Carrara marble. And I did my best. I am a very detailed tile contractor. I did everything myself. And 2 weeks later, after the customer had started using the shower, she gave me a call and explaining that she has very strange dark spots on in her shower floor, newly installed shower floor, and they wouldn't go away, even like if it took a few days without taking a shower. And I was, I mean, kind of shocked because, I mean, it was looking very strange. She sent me some pictures, and when I came there, it looked as though there was standing water right below the stone. And I knew for sure that the water had no room to stand there because I had my slope, everything was done right. I had my waterproofing, and I mean, but I had to do something. So I had to fix that floor. And so this is how I became familiar with this problem. I
So
started doing my
this is
research
just 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
So
It was
this
almost,
is
yeah, it was 2 years ago. It was April. She called me in May 2018. It was
and
exactly 2 years ago.
you couldn't blame it on the construction cleaning company that, you know, cleaned before the homeowner moved in, or the electrician who put his ladder on or the flooring contractor who spilled stain, or none of that, huh?
None of that. It looked wet. It looked like, wet floor, like partially. And I started calling my industry peers from my town, professional contractors, and they told me, yes, we are familiar with that problem. It's very common for light colored marble, and nobody knows for sure why it's happening, why it happens. So what's the cause and how to prevent it? They started, telling me different things about mineral composition of marble, etc., etc. But I became so curious, to find the cause. And it took me days when I was just searching internet, including European Google, translating different articles, trying to figure out what was happening with that floor. And just being short, um, I was able to connect with one stone expert from Florida. His name is Fred Houston. He's a well-known stone expert with almost 40 years of experience. He does forensic investigation for silent stone failures. And he started kind of, guiding me and helping me. And he was very curious about, the solution of that problem as well. And this is how we started our research and testing. So I ended up, we originally, actually, so originally we thought we realized that something was holding moisture inside the stone. And we thought that it was just sealer, penetrating sealer, because I did seal my floor. It was grouted with epoxy grout, and it was sealed with a very good penetrating sealer. It's called 511 Porous Plus, which is one of the most expensive on the tile and stone market. And we thought that it was just sealer holding moisture inside the stone. And so we realized that, doing different things in our research, and then I decided to construct different shower modules done with different methods, just to recreate those situations that we have inside showers. And I started talking to different manufacturers and stone suppliers, and they were very supportive to me. And this is how it all started. But when we started doing the research, so the actual testing, and also some people, kind of ridiculed me that you cannot do your own experiments in your own backyard or your garage, etc., etc. But then, after we started doing things, and regardless of weather conditions, regardless of installation methods, it started showing, same results in any weather with any, things that you could do to that shower modules. So, and eventually we came to the conclusion that we understand the cause of natural stone moisture discoloration that happens in shower floors with light colored marble, especially Carrara or Calcutta type marble. And we are pretty sure that we know the prevention of that problem. And so you can ask me different questions about it. But right now in the summer, we're going to construct new 8 modules just to show those 2 methods that we found as those that work. And we just wanted to show how those methods provide great results with Carrara marble installed at shower floors. But
You mind if I cut in with a
yeah,
quick question? So specifically, the problem you're talking about is what appears to be wetness within the stone. It's not like a brown uh, staining, which
it's not oxidation that can happen as
Yeah.
well inside the stone. But even oxidation, in many cases, it doesn't happen when everything is done with a proper method. When there is proper water evacuation, oxidation will most likely never happen with Thank you.
So yeah, it's that oxidation is that classically sort of brown rust,
Yes.
dull rust color,
Yes.
and that I find that that's a common issue for me. I get called in on all sorts of different problems, and that comes up for me regularly.
Oxidation happens when moisture is trapped either inside or under the stone for a prolonged time. Then
So
oxidation can happen.
so this wetness problem that you're talking about is sort of the precursor to the
Yes. Yes.
oxidation problem. Got
Yes.
it. So
Well, wait.
Yeah,
So would it continue? Like if it's wet and you left it, would you expect oxidation to happen later?
And it doesn't necessarily mean it will happen
But
because
it can. Okay.
it can, depending on how much iron does marble have. And nobody knows how much until you do labs or you test it, the stone
yeah,
itself.
okay, all right. And one other point for the listening public, um, I did the calculation once in my career, but it turns out shower stalls get far more rain in them than the rainiest place on the face of the earth, which gets something like 450 or 500 inches of rain a year. Shower stalls get like over 1,000, the equivalent of over 1,000 inches of rain. So they're incredibly wet places. People like me and Christy are constantly talking about water and dealing with water and building
Yeah.
enclosures and how to mitigate the risks and this and that. Well, it
Okay,
turns out
let me quickly show you what I'm talking about just to visualize it. I didn't prepare any other pictures, but this is from the NTCA reference manual. So I'm the member of the National Tile Contractors Association, and this is one of the most reputable reference manuals, industry documents for tile and stone installers in the
yep,
US. So on page 260, chapter 10, it has some examples, and you can see, do you see
oh
that
yeah,
floor? That's natural stone, and it has dark area around the drain and also dark area along the perimeter.
Yeah, it just looks wet.
Yes.
yeah.
And you
And
see
I think
here,
people know
yeah,
what you mean with marble looking wet. It's darker, but it looks wet. It just
yeah, but
looks wet.
also we're not talking about just, so I have a sheet of Carrara marble. So we are not talking about just individual pieces getting darker. Some pieces will react differently to water, but we are talking about blotchy looking
Whole
random
areas.
stains that surpass individual tiles. And it looks like, like stain and more, and that stain would grow. And even if the shower is stopped being used, those stains can keep growing for, sometimes it would take months because,
So you found out that what it wasn't, but what is it?
yes. So maybe you have any other
Mine,
questions?
I have the tile that you showed me. I have that. It's a little bit larger, but that's the tile in my shower, and it doesn't look stained.
Okay.
But so what did my contractor do right, or accidentally? I'm sure he didn't know.
It,
I
it,
think
it
he's a
is
nice
very,
guy, but I
yeah.
don't think he knew.
It is very important. So I recently wrote an article, and that article will be published in the July's edition of Tile Letter magazine. Um, so it's not published yet, but it is important to point out that marble has been used for wet areas for a very long time, very long time. Marble is a suitable stone for wet areas. I have a very good book that I would highly recommend you to purchase. It's called Dimension Stone Design Manual by Natural Stone Institute. Right now it's called Natural Stone Institute. It's a former Marble Institute of America. You can purchase this book. You can also download different chapters online from their website. So it's called Dimension Stone Design Manual. I have volume 8. It's a very informative book. It's all about natural stone installation, et cetera, selection and maintenance. So marble is not a very porous material as many people think. Marble is a very dense, compact stone, and it's absolutely suitable for wet areas.
Well, do you mind if I just jump in? You say wet areas, indoor wet
Would be
areas.
showers.
Indoors, though, not outdoors. For the
Well, wet areas, yeah, I would prefer, definitely yes. In our climate, it's better to not install marble outside because right now I mean, it will be subject to weathering with this, weather that we have and acidic rains, etc., etc. I
Okay.
would not recommend installing marble outside in such climate as Pacific Northwest and those that are areas that are subject to very low temperatures. Maybe it would be good in Florida in dry areas, but no high humidity in Florida. Well, never mind. Yes,
Okay.
I would recommend it for interior wet areas like showers. So before 1990s, even before the beginning of 2000s, marble was mostly installed in residential showers with a so-called traditional dry pack method. Are you familiar? Are you familiar with that method?
Yeah.
Molly, are you familiar with traditional? It's called water in, water out system. So it's a system. It's a traditional system that you have a traditional waterproofing membrane made of PVC or CPE, and it's made so it's a loosely laid membrane that you put on a pre-sloped concrete or dry pack cement floor. You connect it to the drain, and then you install another layer of dry pack. It's called dry pack mortar. It's a highly porous sand mixed with Portland cement, 1:4 or 1:5 ratio. And that dry pack mortar bed provides we could call it a bedding of connected porosity. It has a very high porosity so that any water that goes behind the tile or below the tile or below the stone quickly goes toward the drain. So it would hit the pre-sloped waterproof membrane and it would go to the drain and it would quickly evacuate. So this is a traditional drain. It's a traditional, sorry, it's a traditional three-part Clinton drain drain. Sorry, it has these channels. They're called weep holes. So water would evacuate through those weep holes, and it would evacuate to the drain. If that drain, so that system is designed for proper internal water evacuation, meaning that any water that goes below the tile or stone will quickly evacuate.
Quick,
Evacuate.
Pasha,
Yes,
quick
go ahead.
question for you.
Yes.
What percentage of the water that lands on the surface of the tile do you think gets past the surface of the tile into that mud bed below?
Depending on how heavily the shower is used and depending on what material is used. With stone, I would say that if a shower, it's a very good question because such experiments have never been done. So nobody knows for sure, but we know for sure that water goes below because sometimes when you have to do, let's say, destructive testing, or you would need to remove tiles and check whether the drain was installed properly because sometimes the installer doesn't protect the weep
The
holes
weep
properly.
holes, yeah.
They can get clogged. And in order to do that, so you dig in and you realize that that mortar bed is actually filled with moisture and water because water cannot properly drain and evacuate.
So
Now,
it's go ahead.
is that drain that you're showing? So, okay, when I do a drain like that, sort of like that on a plaza deck or something, what I call it is a two-stage drain. So I have drainage occurring at two different up-down levels during in the system. So the first place that water can enter the drain is at the walking surface. So like your shower, right? That's from the surface of the tiles, it goes down and goes into the drain. The second place that water can enter the drain is some other place lower. So on a plaza deck, if you know, outside and you've got pavers or whatever, you have drainage happening at the surface, and then underneath also, because we know that just like with a shower, some amount of water gets underneath it, but we call it a two-stage drain. Two questions: is the terminology the same? And also, is that par for the course? Is that that's what shower drains do? Like that's true for most any shower drain is gonna have those weep holes like that and have drainage occurring at both levels, or is that special?
Uh, this would be, so the traditional three-part clamp and drain um, is pretty much a traditional drain for that type of system. That system, I can provide you, and I would like to provide all of you with, you know, written information. I can send you links. I can also send you links to very good documents that you could have. They're very helpful. For example, this is TCNA, Tile Council of North America, handbook for ceramic glass and stone tile installation. It's really technical, and you will find it very helpful. It has a bunch of methods, and it describes pretty much every method. It describes the difference between traditional drain and also bonding flange drains that I will talk about it later. Um, so yeah, so the terminology could be a little bit different because, you know, that's a different industry, like tile and stone industry.
Yeah, but
I
that's the
think,
concept. It's
yeah, that's
you've
the
got,
concept.
yeah,
That's a
that's
very
great.
good word. That's the first concept, to provide proper evacuation of water, both topically and internally. So if that method, there are different details about that method, and it's really important that when stone is installed, it's installed by a um, experienced installer, contractor who really knows what he does, because not every installer can do the work. It's really detailed. And uh, with ceramic or porcelain tile, most of these problems would never be visible. But marble, light colored stone, like marble, is translucent. You can see, you know, a translucent stone is the stone that you can see light through, and it will show presence of trapped moisture. This is why we see those problems. So this is a traditional system. If it's done properly, water will not be trapped. It will go through stone and it will be evacuated. That's why before the beginning of 2000s, there were not too many cases with Carrara marble discoloration, moisture discoloration at shower floors. It would still happen if the installer did a mistake, if he didn't protect the weep holes, you know, they would get clogged, and eventually, you know, it would start a capillary action and it would start, you know, staining the stone. Um, but mostly it would be installed successfully with great results. But in the beginning of 2000s, some newer systems and newer methods were introduced. And right now we have very good systems on the market. Like, I'm not sure whether you're familiar. For example, this is a Schluter drain. Schluter is a German company. It's a very good company. I mostly use Schluter for my shower installations. And there are similar methods. So those methods are called, it's called a bonded waterproofing membrane, meaning that with this system, with such system, you can install stone directly over waterproofing membrane. So if with the traditional system, you have a thick layer of dry pack mortar between the stone and your waterproofing membrane. With that newer system, you install stone or tile directly over waterproofing membrane. And that waterproofing membrane is connected to a what's called bonding flange drain. And the idea that stands behind it is that water will go below the tile, and then it will either quickly evaporate, dry out, or it will go to the drain. And that's where most of the problems with natural stone started occurring in showers. So it's related to the design and actually the purpose of that system. So the idea that, you know, that many people have is that they think that because waterproofing membrane is right below the stone, water that goes below the stone will evaporate or will dry very quick. And that's not true. This is the very reason why we have stone moisture discoloration in stone shower floors because water is not able, so it's not taken away from the underside of stone. It sits right below it.
It's
And
crazy to hear you describe that because I can't even tell you how many forensic investigations I've done for balconies that have failed for exactly the reason you've described, but it hasn't produced staining, it's produced leaks because someone will they'll do exactly what you've described. They'll do a fluid applied waterproofing membrane over on the structure, a concrete structure, wood structure, whatever, and then they'll install whatever their walking surface is right on top. They won't have what you're describing. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're describing one system where there was a waterproofing material, and then on top of it there was a medium for drainage, a thing that water could flow through. And then the second system is you have a waterproofing membrane, maybe even a better waterproofing membrane, but we've taken out the medium for drainage. Wow, that's crazy.
I will try, Foster, I will try to explain it very quickly. I will try to do it just in 2 minutes. So many people don't understand that this bonded membrane system, it comes from different manufacturers. They have different details, but actually it's not able to provide internal water evacuation because the design of the drain, for example, this is a Schluter drain, and this is just the grate, the top part that you see, but this is the internal part. It is consisted of what's called lateral adjustment ring. It sits right in the
Yeah.
opening around the drain. And then it has this, it's called height adjustment collar.
Yeah. That just
So
lets you get up to the top of the stone.
you install this with mortar, and then once it's installed, it creates at least 1/8 of an inch dam around the drain.
Oh,
Water
great.
is not able to seep through it.
Yeah.
And then, moreover, thin set mortar that you have above, that you use to bond your stone to waterproofing membrane is not as porous as dry pack mortar bed,
Yeah.
and water doesn't really go through it. It would go to a certain point and then it would stop. Also, most membranes, except for liquid applied membrane that feels like rubber, it becomes pretty much like rubber. They have it's a fleece that is on. It's called anchoring fleece. It's a top layer of the membrane, and that anchoring fleece also absorbs moisture. Some of the prefabricated shower trays, they're made of extruded polystyrene, which is foam, but it has a thin cementitious coating on top. That cementitious coating gets wet as well. Once your thin set mortar and the anchoring fleece or the cementitious coating get wet, that water, that moisture pretty much stays there.
Oh,
And it
Pasha, you're like the grim reaper for
saturating
all these poor
stone.
manufacturers.
So there is a good news though. Uh, Christine used a very good word, concept. So while the first concept provides us with a bedding under the stone that quickly takes away any water from the stone, the second concept would be to not allow any water to go below the stone and be evacuated topically. And that is achieved by using a suitable 100% epoxy solids adhesive, epoxy grout, and a very good and breathable penetrating sealer. That method is the only method that will be suitable for those bonded membranes. And actually, that is a better method. I will explain why a little bit later. But what it does is this: epoxy adhesive properly installed. Properly installed would mean 100% coverage with no voids. There is a method how you achieve it. Would provide a highly water repellent mortar that doesn't absorb any water, because epoxy mortar water absorption would be less than 0.5%, same as porcelain. So nothing under the stone would pretty much absorb water. Then you have epoxy grout that has same water repellency. And then you seal your stone, but not all sealers are equal. So if you use a good quality penetrating sealer, so far I've tested only one that has provided us with great results. It's called Bulletproof Sealer from StoneTech. Once you seal it, water will be able to enter the stone only as vapor, and the volume of that water or moisture would be so tiny that it would quickly evaporate within a few hours. So I have one of the modules done with that method, and that method has shown absolutely best results. It would get wet just a little bit. The stone would, get dark just for 2 hours. And then 2 hours later, it would dry out and it would return to its original light color. I had that module sitting in my backyard since September 2019, and it went through so many different cycles, weather cycles, through freeze thaw, through, I live in Pacific Northwest, so it rains all the time, and it has shown absolutely same results. It would return to its original light color within 2 to 3 hours.
So you can't imagine how much you're speaking to the things I love talking about. You're like, my new best friend, believe me. But so for those of us building scientists in the listening audience, what, as far as I'm concerned, what you described is this 100% epoxy adhesive and grout is a barrier system. You're preventing liquid water from getting behind beneath the walking surface, as opposed to the pre 2000 system, which was a drainage system. You're managing the water in a different way. I don't want to say you're letting the water through, but you know that water's going to get through, and you're letting it out in a different way. So that is rather fascinating.
Uh, one, there is a few very important points. That old or traditional method has some problems when you use modern marble mosaics with it. The biggest problem with that method and modern marble tile is that most of the marble mosaics that we have today on our market would have what's called resin backing. So resin backing doesn't necessarily mean resin. Most of the times it's polyester. Is polyester resin though?
Uh,
Polyester?
that's close enough, but
Close enough.
not really. But
So
it's
polyester, if I don't know whether you will see it, but it's
yeah.
shiny. It's a little bit shiny. Um, Stone manufacturers started adding such backing to the back of stone to reduce breakage during handling, transportation, and even installation. Because some marbles, once you cut it, it just starts falling apart. So it reinforces the stone. The problem is that it's not, there is no uniform standard for such backing. Sometimes the installer doesn't even know what type of backing that is. It's impossible to figure out. But this looks like polyester. The problem is that you cannot install stone with such fiberglass reinforcement with traditional mortars. You have to bond it with epoxy adhesive because traditional mortars would require what's called moisture exchange between mortar and whatever you install with
Yeah.
stone or tile. This
Yep.
backing would prevent moisture to grab onto the stone.
It's a quick question. When it that you then get you lose its adhesion, right? It just falls
Correct.
off eventually,
Yes.
correct? Like thin
Also,
set stone falling off the side of a building,
yes,
so to
yes,
speak.
yes, yes. Also, it adds another impervious layer under the stone. And any water, let's say water will penetrate below the grout
Makes
line,
it even worse. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
goes into the dry pack mortar, and then some. So you guys are building scientists, you know it much better than I, but there will be some evaporation. But during that evaporation, the moisture that evaporates would hit this impervious backing, and it would start collecting under the stone,
Yeah.
creating this problem that we're discussing here. So that's why that newer method is more acceptable. It's a more, I would say, suitable, and it's a better method for modern marble mosaics. Also, there is a very important thing about sealers. Many people, including myself 2 years ago, think that penetrating sealers or impregnators are I would call it a cure for all maladies. So people think that all you have to do, you have to really, I mean, you have to seal your stone, possibly with a few coats of very good penetrating sealer, and it would solve all problems associated with stone in wet areas. People think that sealer applied to stone would prevent stone from absorbing water, and that is not true. Actually, it's a vice versa, because no sealer that we have on the market would actually prevent water to enter the stone. Water will still enter the stone, and this is Foster what we discussed with you in our first email. So you mentioned capillary condensation. So there are different ways, but water would still enter a sealed stone, is either as liquid or as vapor. Once it's there, it can condense into liquid, and sealer is not breathable for liquid. It's only breathable for vapors. Once you have liquid under the sealed stone, it would be trapped. And then it takes a
Yeah,
long time for that moisture to turn to become vapor and be evaporated.
yeah.
That's the problem. So most of the problems that we have is with fully sealed shower pans that people think, would be the best method, but it's actually not. So the only, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, too many
No, that's
details.
all. I'm loving it. Believe me, I'm gonna just try to hold myself back from using all the fancy thermodynamic words to describe any of that. But I had heard over the years, some installers have told me that you should not use epoxy grouts with white marbles because it can get some bleed in and staining and this and that. So what's the story there, if there is one?
It's a good question. Uh, with Carrara marble, epoxy adhesive or grout would usually never cause any problems associated with what's called bleeding inside the stone, or sometimes with bigger tiles you see, dark edges along the perimeter. It's
Yeah,
called
picture framing.
picture framing, right? With Carrara marble, it's a very dense stone. I've never seen. I've done many modules and I've talked to many installers. Epoxy grout normally, or any other grout, would normally never cause such problem with Carrara marble. With other stones though, like onyx or some limestones that are softer, it could cause some problems. So in our research, we're specifically talking about Carrara marble or light colored marble. And
Got
the
it.
problem is, when I started this research and experiment, I first tried to inspire shower systems manufacturers to do this. I, 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 I tried to talk to them and convince them to start doing that, and nobody was really interested. So everybody was interested in getting results, but not testing it because they didn't want to take the responsibility.
Well, yes, I'm sure you now know that there is very little research done in the
Yes.
construction and building industry, and even less in the architecture industry, as far as I could
And,
tell.
and the former technical director for the Natural Stone Institute told me that actually nobody has ever really tested Carrara marble in showers in wet areas. So they have some information, but there is no testing behind most of that information. Just field
It's
experience.
just wild. I mean, there's a lot of areas that you sort of assume that there must be some formal apparatus that this exists on, but it just doesn't. I was shocked to learn that about ventilation rates. By the way, like, I mean, there's stuff that we've studied, but it's just shocking how many conventions that you assume are based on something really scientific, and it turns out that it's from research done in like the 1840s or something, like back when,
Yeah.
whatever. It's kind of amazing when you look into where these rules of thumb come from.
So, Pasha, I really find this fascinating because a lot of clients, contractors, people like myself, architects deal with, like a lot of problems in this regard. I mean, it's like every architect's nightmare is to get that phone call from the homeowner, like, oh my God, there's this problem, and like, okay, let's call the contractor and put him out of business. Um, and to find out that there's actually like logical explanation and means to solve it, I find absolutely fascinating. Um, One of the things that I typically am trying to recommend to architects in the early stages of design um, is to not specify anything with regard to how a shower stall should be made until they know what material is going to go on the floor or the walls. Is that a wise thing to say, or is there some universal thing? Like,
Yeah.
is it the same for slabs as it is for tiles, or ceramic
That was
tile
going to be my
versus?
question, Foster, because most of our clients have slab layouts, not
Yeah.
tile, in their showers. And then the other thing I wanted to ask about was radiant flooring. Most of our showers have some type of heat element in the floor. And if that affects, that obviously needs a mortar bed or something to set in.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, these are very good questions. So first of all, it would be very great if architects could become familiar with some of the tile and stone industry technical documents. They're
Oh, you're breaking
available.
up on me. What? What?
They are very informative and they're very great. TCNA handbook for ceramic, glass, and stone tile installation. Very great resource. Uh, this is more for tile and stone installers. This is called NTCA reference manual. And then specifically for stone, we have what I showed you previously, Dimension Stone Design Manual. But it would be also great just to connect with, have connections with professional tile and stone contractors who you could always consult with regarding specific installations, because it's all case by case situations, and it has many details in it.
And I'm not crazy in thinking that for many materials and applications, those manuals allow multiple different methods of installation.
Yes.
So the method you described specifically for uh, white Carrara marble tiles, that's not universal for every variety of Carrara installation. Like if somebody wanted a Carrara slab floor, you wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't think you could do that, right? You'd have
Um,
to use the traditional, um, mud bed.
Depending on whether you have any backing, polyester or resin backing on the back of
Huh.
your stone.
Wow, yeah, I hadn't.
Many details have to be taken into consideration. It's a case-by-case situation. Actually, in Europe, they mostly have, I searched Italian, Google, and I saw so many pictures. They have prefabricated Carrara shower trays, seamless, that are installed on shower floors.
Yeah,
Those slabs will not show discoloration as much as stone mosaics. Stone mosaics would show it the most, but if installed properly, it will not show any discoloration. So
If
yeah,
you
it's a
see,
case by case situation. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
if you see the discoloration on the floors, would you ever find it on other horizontal surfaces like a bench or a niche? If you end up with water on those.
Yes, it can happen on any horizontal surface inside the shower. Most likely, so I've tested, I had 10 Carrara modules. All of them were made with tile not bigger than 2 by 2, so 2 inches by 2 inches. But I had 2 modules done with 4 inches by 4 inches by 4 inches tiles. Discoloration was not very visible on bigger tiles because that, moisture would kind of blend in because of the bigger size of the tile. It would be kind of spread inside the tile. I can't explain it very, very well, but the entire floor would remain kind of darker, but it would not have blotchy, random looking staining. So if you have a Carrara um, like slab installed on a bench, shower bench, most likely that discoloration, in patterns would not be very visible. At the
Well,
same time,
if you mind if I jump in a little bit, Pasha?
please do.
I met Pash because of one specific job that I'm not at liberty to talk about really. However, it's worthwhile hearing that certainly in steam rooms, you can get this variety of wet discoloration on any surface that's tiled, meaning the ceiling, the wall, the niche, the
Mhm.
fancy thing, the built in the wall, you name it, everywhere.
Yes.
Further, it's not just white tiles, as Pasha said, it's translucent tiles. So you can get translucent marble in almost any color, like original color. And then all of a sudden, when it gets this moisture inside of it, it's no longer its original color and looks wet and problematic. And
Yes.
so it's definitely not just horizontal surfaces. It's really like
I wanted to
how
mention the
much
steam shower as well.
water
Well,
is there and how it got there. Anyway,
once that happens, Foster, is it a replacement job or is there some type of treatment or repair?
uh, well, you may have to send me a retainer check before I answer, but it's
Not in that specific job, in general, like if you saw that happen in another shower.
My quick answer is going to be you're going to have, like, the only real way to deal with it is to pull it out and redo it the proper way. In other words, if it's really wet, staining, Pasha's going to be better at answering this than me. He's probably done this 100 times. But if I got called in to make a recommendation, it would be, sorry, yank it out and do it this very specific way that Pasha's recommending.
It would require forensic investigation because it all depends. Sometimes you can kind of depending on how it was originally installed, you can improve the look. You cannot fully, fix it, but you can improve the look by adding something. In some situations, adding a very breathable sealer like Stone Tech Bulletproof would help, but only in few cases, not in all of them.
If there's any other type of, error or fault in the stone, a crack or some natural deformation in that, does that contribute to the staining or is that completely a separate concern?
When we are talking about moisture discoloration, normally it would only happen due to inappropriate installation method. Because the stone, like Carrara marble composition is pretty much the same, and it's a carbonate rock, and
because that's a common thing that contractors will say when this fails. They'll blame it on the stone, not the way that it was installed.
You are so right. Yes.
The name of the article that I just wrote for Tile Letter magazine is it's called, as far as I remember, Marble Moisture Discoloration. Don't blame the stone.
There you go.
Yeah, because I hear it all the time. No, not. So I participate in closed Facebook groups. Some of them, have up to 10,000 members, and they all blame natural stone. And I'm saying no, don't blame the stone. It has been used for wet areas for a very long time with great results, and even nowadays, some installers still install it with great results. And some people say, you know what, natural stone will be subject to discoloration from shampoos and soap, etc., etc. And I have a picture. I should have printed that picture out and show it to you. It's a picture of a 20-year-old marble shower. It just gets basic cleaning with pH neutral cleaner occasionally. It looks better than any other ceramic shower that I personally saw in my Thailand stone career. It looks great because the great news about natural stone is that it can be restored from pretty much almost any condition, except for sometimes like heavy oxidation. But it can be restored, it can be cleaned. That's why maintenance is also a very important part of any installation. So we don't stop, so our job, my job as a professional tile and stone installer is not finished when I just install things. I provide my customers with information how to properly treat that specific product that they have in their shower. I provide them with information and very basic and proper cleaners. And I explain that if you don't maintain it properly, it doesn't matter how good I installed it, it will lose its aesthetical, beauty.
How frequently should a stone in a shower that's getting used regularly get resealed? With this bulletproof sealer.
Yeah. So once pretty much bulletproof sealer penetrates below the surface of the stone for maybe 1/8 of an inch, so it goes pretty deep, and it will. I cannot. I don't know exactly how many years it will take, but once people start seeing that that discoloration remains longer on the surface of stone, they could do a water test just by putting a few drops of water. And normally, if you leave it for 10 minutes, just a few drops, and then if after 10 minutes you can see a dark spot in your stone, that would mean that water started penetrating stone as liquid. That would indicate that stone needs to be resealed. If
Got it.
after 10 minutes you wipe it off and there is no dark spot, that would mean that sealer prevents water to enter the stone as liquid.
Can I use
That's a very
this
basic.
bulletproof on a countertop too?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So a sealer is
Asking for a friend.
no very good point. I'm specifically talking about wet areas and natural stone like
Oh no.
any dry area.
Uh-oh.
You lose it?
Pasha, you slowed down.
Pasha? Oh shoot.
Ah. Oh well.
Now I'm never
Yeah.
gonna know.
No, hey, yeah,
Gotta
that's right. When
prevent
he
the
got
wine
to
spills on the
yeah,
countertop.
That's right.
and
Actually, you know what I have on my counter? I bought this house and I wanted marble countertops. I don't know why. It was such a stupid decision. I didn't cook then, and now I cook, and now I'm like, whoopsie. Anyway, my during my big housewarming party thing, I had this an enormous champagne bucket, and the champagne bucket, the just the water. There's a water stain still on my counter from
That's a
the
fun
champagne
memory to
bucket.
have, though.
I mean,
yeah,
it's 2 years ago. I mean, it helped me get over. There's lots of
Yeah.
imperfections in it and whatever. I like
yeah,
it and
yeah,
it's fine. And but that my can I get rid of this?
yeah, right. Yeah, it may. I don't. Yeah. Anyway, I find this particular
This
subject
guy is
fascinating because
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, he knows it's like crazy the amount of knowledge he has, and it like like Molly, you could speak for as a practicing architect in this group here. Like, my experience back, when I was a contractor for all those years, like problems with finishes are where you end up spending all your time, and that's where the homeowners get the
Yep.
most irritated and da da da. And guys like me love to talk about insulation and vapor, this that, but the truth is the homeowners, like, it's what
They
they
want to
look
look.
at and
Yeah.
what they deal with, and quite frankly what they spend gobs of money on. And it is complicated, like here he's got all this knowledge, and he's sort of talking about like one variety of stone, and there's I don't know, there's 100 varieties. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I always feel great when I find people like this, because I'm like, oh my god, I have somebody to call. It's fantastic. And you're
Hey, you're
back.
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 We
It's called
were
right?
No,
So
you are.
we missed it. What do, can I use this bulletproof on my friend? Can my
Yes,
friend use this on?
you can. Actually, most impregnating sealers would be absolutely okay in dry areas. It's not just bulletproof sealer. Most of the impregnating sealers that are on the market are okay to use in dry areas, countertops, tile flooring, etc. Yes.
Huh. So, Pasha, there's 101 other general types of stone, limestones and granites and et cetera, et cetera. So everything you've talked about tonight is rather specific to translucent marbles.
Mhm.
So what are the chances you could forward us the list of names of the other experts that are expert in all these other uniquely special stones, because it is very complex, and you've done a great job of really explaining the complexity of what everybody sort of believes is so simple. Oh, just go put tile on the floor or on the wall or whatever. No. It's not nearly that simple. It's very complex. Um, what's your recommendation for designers and practitioners and people like me that go in and have to solve problems after the fact? Um, regarding this crazy complexity. Any words of wisdom for us?
Well, this document will give you a lot of useful information regarding other stones like
Yep.
travertine, limestone. It names, different reasons for failures associated with those stones. Also, I would highly recommend to contact one of the Thailand stone experts, including myself, and I also know very good, experienced people with great background in the Thailand stone industry who could always help you with their specifications and recommendations. And I would highly recommend you, maybe for one of your next meetings, I would highly recommend you to invite Dr. Fred Houston. I mentioned him earlier, so he was the one who was helping me a lot,
Yep.
and he hosts the only stone and tile radio talk show in the United States, as far as I know, and where he touches different problems associated with tile and stone. So he's a great expert, and he does annual classes for tile and stone inspectors. So he's a very experienced person, and he could cover other types of stone and answer all your questions. I would
So
highly recommend you to invite him.
it's been my experience that some of the material manufacturers, the grout manufacturers, the thin set manufacturers, are not quite as helpful as I would hope they would be. And I'm going to say multiply that by 10 for the sealers, the manufacturers of sealers. Do you find that also to be true? And do you have any manufacturers that's not true and they're really great with regard to
Actually,
their information?
we just recently did it's called Z Panel. It's an annual event from by one of the local stone suppliers, and actually they're a manufacturer of stone, natural stone. They helped me a lot by donating Carrara marble for my experiments, and they are going to write their own specification for natural stone Carrara marble installation in shower areas, and also, for example, in our area here in the Pacific Northwest. We have great stone and tile supplies and shower systems manufacturer representatives that are very responsive, and they're very great people that are ready to help you whenever you call them.
Right. But I'm not crazy. Like, no sealer lists a perm rating, a vapor permeance rating. They just,
They
I
don't
don't
even
even think,
list it.
Yeah.
they don't even, no, it doesn't even, not even listed.
That's why
And,
in the next phase of our experiment, we're going to test 4 different penetrating sealers from 4 different manufacturers. Actually, we will be helping those manufacturers to see how their sealers work with those specific methods.
And I'm not going to name the manufacturer, but in terms of like grout and thin set adhesive, I find it very difficult to get like great useful information out of those manufacturers. And they have great, they have great products. But you know, when you're trying to help somebody specify products and you want to really make sure you're getting it right, like it's really nice to talk to somebody like yourself who gives you like direct, useful, you know, actionable information. And I don't get that out of these manufacturers, you know, and I find that very difficult.
So I have I've got a question. I hope it doesn't take too long. But okay, so I'll ask it anyway. When you were describing testing the permeance, the true permeance of these sealers, it made me think of research that Graham Finch has done. He's a building scientist with RDH Consulting in your neck of the woods. He's in Vancouver, Canada, but the company has a Seattle and a Portland office. Anyway, they were testing roof membranes, flat, like, oh my gosh, I'm losing all my words here. Fluid applied membranes that go on flat roofs, right on, and applied over concrete. And they were finding that they would get failures. They'd get bubbles in between the concrete and the roof membrane. So Graham did a whole bunch of testing and found that these weren't leaks. Water was accumulating under the membrane because of salts in the concrete, the chloride content of the concrete, and water would be sitting on the top of these membranes, and it would there'd be an osmotic drive pulling the water through the membrane. And when he did testing, it turned out that a lot of these manufacturers, and he found, it's sort of funny, I want to introduce you guys because he found the process was very similar to yours in that he asked a whole bunch of questions. Nobody had done this kind of testing, and the manufacturers wanted the results, but most of them didn't want to. They didn't want to know either. Anyway, he did some testing and he found that these membranes that were advertised as being impermeable, it turned out were not as impermeable to vapor as advertised, and the permeance ended up affecting this osmotic transfer. And you get, I mean, these blisters are crazy. If anybody's listening and wants to kind of Google this, Google Graham Finch and osmosis, and you can see these roofs bubbling up. Oh, it's crazy. And if you punch a hole through it, it's like you get a fountain. It's nuts. So my question for you is, in all of this stuff, I'm sure there's a completely different study of how the salt and mineral content of these mortars that we're using can react with different types of stones and present all kinds of problems, whether it's osmosis or staining. Or is there anything I've said that you can comment on and provide something useful, or is this just the beginning of a college level class?
Could be.
Yes.
It could be, but just from our experience, moisture discoloration that we were talking about is not actually staining of the stone, because stain cannot go away by itself. So if something is caused by something within the stone, then it would literally stain the stone. It would never go by itself. It can be removed with a poultice method that will kind of suck it out and remove it. But that is just moisture discoloration. It's only moisture that is
I
trapped.
love the clarification in the terminology. I will not make that mistake again. I will use this too.
And I'm not crazy, Pasha. Like with white marble, you absolutely have to use white Portland cement. You cannot use,
because it's translucent. If you use dark cement, and that is actually one of the general requirements for any natural stone installation, white mortar is highly recommended, because with a few exceptions, gray gray mortar will contribute to just darkening of the stone. It would look darker.
Yeah.
And you asked me about the perm ratings for penetrating sealers. Actually, there is no information on that. But waterproofing membranes do have the perm rating for their sheet applied membranes.
Yes.
So all of the like Schluter and those membranes, they do have perm rating.
Yes. Yeah. That's easy to find. Sealers, like for a guy like me, exactly the piece of information I want in order to select, one versus another, none of them have it. Very frustrating.
Before I started doing my experiment, I contacted one of the representatives from a big sealer manufacturer, and I explained him everything, and I told him, you could become the first sealer company that would do such experiment. Do it. I'm a small contractor. You have much more resources than I do. And he would not be interested. And I said, okay, then I will have to do
it. In their defense, it's rather complicated. In other words, it's a penetrating sealer. The permeance of, a Carrara marble with that sealer is going to be different than the permeance of, Calcutta marble with that sealer versus granite with that sealer. It is a complicated problem.
I understand.
But
Yeah,
I still
but
want
they
it.
figure it out for NFPA 285. They can figure it out.
That's a good point.
They
That's a
got
good
labs
point.
and money and
Yes.
stuff, right?
Yes. Yep. Well, I should let all of you go back to your lives. We've been at this for about an hour and 15 minutes. It's not really supposed to go much longer than that. Pasha, I love this stuff. This is great. You can call me anytime you want if you just want to talk.
Okay, I will.
So thank you. Molly, thank you for listening in. Christy, thank you
for teaching
again.
me something new.
Absolutely. This was
Yeah.
terrific.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is like, drinking water from a fire hose. This is, Pasha is way ahead of the curve here as far as I can tell. If there's one other person like him in the United States, I'd be surprised. I think you're listening to information that is not going to become like general public information for a number of years.
Well, you know what? We are working. So our research was presented at the NTCA annual meeting in February, and most likely it will be, I don't know how much from our research, but some of it should be published in the new edition of the reference manual, 2020, 2021 edition.
I don't have any doubt. I'm still trying to get contractors to abide by the rules that were written back in 1930. Forget about the ones that are going to be written next year. So, but it's great information. I really appreciate it, and it will get out there. And there's nothing like problems and lawyers to solve to fix real problems in our industry. So, thank you. All right, so everybody, don't forget to save your recording and then upload it to that Dropbox link, which hopefully we won't have any trouble this week as we did last week. So if you have any trouble, just email me and we'll figure it out. But and it doesn't need to be done tonight, Pasha. You can do it tomorrow or the next couple of days or whatever. All right. Anybody have any last questions for Pasha? Molly, that's it, huh? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you,
Molly, Christine.
Thanks.
It was nice
Thank
meeting
you.
Thank you.
So long.
Bye.
I got to figure out how to do this now. There we go.
There we go.